Asunder, published by Tanner Halbert. Asunder is dedicated to my students in Kuroshio. Work hard and achieve your dreams. Chapter 1, The Witch of the Willow. The creature was out of sight, but that only made Aliya's stomach flutter. It was out there. Somewhere. As her foot slipped on the frostbitten grass, she managed to catch herself, but the slight jar ushered a groan from Hector. Shush. The steam of her breath swirled through the air. When Hector didn't protest anymore, Aliya dared to peek farther over the hill. Rolling foothills stretched to the horizon, frozen grass sparkling like gemstones. In a gully, a few puffs of fog drifted lazily over a forking river, its embankment rooted with leafless groves of willow brush. Far to the west, Aliya spotted a wall of blue snow-capped mountains. Supposedly, the town of Agari was nested within them. It was maybe a 2-day journey on foot. Of course, if Aliya was to fly there, it would take a fraction of the time. But Hector, being a stocky mercenary, was impossible to carry, let alone fly with, even without his armor. Instead, she had stolen a rickety wheelbarrow from an abandoned farmstead and had pushed him up and down several miles across the countryside already. The growing blisters on her hands and the midday sun now called for respite. Those patches of brush might offer some cover. Aliya crested the hill and watched her feet as she descended, taking a switchback to avoid losing control of the wheelbarrow. Once or twice again, the frosted grass nearly toppled her, and the wheelbarrow tilted precariously, but she managed to maintain control of the descent. Pushing through brambly trees to the riverbank, she slid Hector to the ground. Birds chirped curiously overhead, hopping from branch to branch. Aliya knelt down and cupped her hands. She watered the mercenary before she drank herself. Then she cleaned the coagulated blood from her back and her ivory wings. The water was frigid. She was certain that if it wasn't for the physical exertion and the fact she was a celestial, the cold would have been crippling. Finally, Aliya dragged her cerulean eyes to the layers of cloth wrapped around Hector's stomach. They were caked and dripping with blood. Wincing, she peeled them back, her stomach stabbing and churning in sympathy. There she saw the horrific, jagged laceration, rimmed black with blood oozing out like molasses. He's still bleeding? He won't make it if this carries on. The Celestial worked quickly, gathering dead leaves and thin sticks, then taking her sword and shaving the sticks down farther. When she had a small pile, she collected a rock from along the riverbank. Aliya then wrapped her cloak around her sword, bit her cheek, and hammered the rock. After some time, a dull crack cut through the morning air, causing the sparrows to scatter, sparks bursting from the collision. When the wood shavings failed to ignite, Aliya slammed her sword down again. Maybe it was the frost, or just plain bad luck. Either way, the wood refused to catch. Come on, you stupid pisa. All too aware of the racket she was making, she hammered several more times before tossing the rock away. Just as she did, the kindling burst into a roaring flame. And here I thought Celestials were known for their magic. Hector's voice was faltering, thick, but still had a smile behind it. Light and ember swirled and fizzled out around his hand before he rested it over his stomach. Aliya sighed and tightened her expression. And I thought Gale mercenaries were good at killing monsters. Ah, fair point. Hector ran his hand under the bandages on his stomach. He grunted and pulled away, fresh gore dripping from his fingers. That big bastard got me good. You soaked through all your bandages, twice. I need to get you to a physician, but we're in the middle of the eastern foothills, 2 days out from Agari. Shouldn't I cauterize your wound? Hector's bushy eyebrows shot up and he turned his head and vomited. After wiping spittle from his beard, he answered, No point. I'll not make it 2 days. I'll be lucky to last the night. Aliya lifted her blade from the flames and rested it back in. Being Empyrean steel, it took longer to absorb heat compared to a regular steel or iron piece. If I can stop your bleeding, my guts have been chewed open and mixed around inside me, and my blood is poisoned from the beast. I'm a dead man. Aliya bristled. But it's the only damn thing I can do. She rustled her feathers and bowed her head, fixating on the fire. Her back ached with a familiar, tingly chill. If only I had my magic. Hector waved. It was less waving, more his hand shaking of its own accord. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate your help. Sorry I gotta go dying on you after all your hard work. But if you feel like obliging a dead man, there is a favor I would ask of you. Shivering, the man reached inside his shirt and pulled out an intricate golden medallion, engraved with a majestic dragon. Its body was coiled around the circumference, a single slit green eye staring out into the world. Etched on the back was Hector's name. My wife is stationed at the Agari garrison. Her name is Sarah. She's blonde, tough as leather boots. You won't mistake her for another lass, trust me. Would you give her my medallion? She'd kill me if she knew I went off and got myself licked. Aliya cracked a grim smile and nodded. Of course. Good, thank you. That's a relief. Hector slumped, his half-open eyes glassy. He wiped the sweat beading across his brow. Other than me, were there any other survivors? Aliya kicked dirt over Hector's mess and knelt beside him. In her mind, she heard ripping and screaming. She saw blood and body parts strewn about the grass. She heard the creature howling in delight as it set upon another mercenary. I doubt it. It was a massacre. Hector's face darkened. Reaching for the flask at his side, he brought it to his lips. When only a few drops trickled free, his face scrunched, exaggerating his wrinkles. Aliya winced. I used that earlier to clean your wound. The flask slipped from his grasp and he groaned, pulling his leg forward. From within his boot, he withdrew a smaller second flask. Good thing I always come prepared. He held it out to Aliya, who declined, then took a long swig. Or he would have, but this flask was empty too. Sorry, I also used that. Hector rolled his head over to Aliya, his eyes accusatory, his voice barely restraining a laugh. You were real thorough at saving my life, weren't you? Not thorough enough, evidently. Well, spirits be damned if I die before I get another drink. Hector sighed and the flask slumped against his chest. But dying's my business. You should head on to Agari. Tell the Gale mercenaries stationed at the garrison that we were ambushed by a Riven. Riven? Aliya echoed the name of the monster. It tasted acrid in her mouth. Then she shook her head. I'm not leaving you. You can tell the garrison yourself. Hector blinked, glancing at the wheelbarrow. A coat of decades-old paint flecked off the boards. Some of the wood had rotted away, and rusty nails jutted out the sides. I'm good. I'd rather die here than in that rolling coffin. You don't have to cry for me. I'm not, it's the fire smoke. Aliya brushed her eyes and realized she had forgotten her sword in the fire. The metal was a rosy pink. As she lifted her blade, the ground rumbled and trees in the distance snapped like hollow bones. Aliya and Hector locked eyes as a monster trampled into the riverbank, spraying dirt and mud in the air. It was vaguely canine, with leafy, thick, matted fur, and thousands of small, sharpened teeth wrapped around a hulking jaw. Its feet hammered into the ground, each the size of a tree stump, and two massive yellow eyes bore into Aliya. The sour stench of rotting grass fouled the air. The Celestial sat frozen in place. Move, legs, move! Her body refused to cooperate, and the monster lunged forward, mouth open wide, about to swallow her whole. No, you don't! The earth underneath the creature suddenly erupted, and a pillar of rock uppercutted its jaw, shattering several teeth and lifting it over the Celestial. The monster crashed and rolled through the brush before wrenching itself back upright. It sniffed the air, eyes narrowing, a guttural bark escaping it. Hector was sitting up, shimmering particles of light flickering around his body. Is your sword for decoration, or do you actually know how to use it? Shaking, Aliya turned. Her hands were clammy and cold. Her feet were moving before her brain could catch up, and she ran towards the monster. It grinned in response, shreds of metal and hair stuck in its narrow teeth. Wait, I didn't mean, Hector hollered, but it was already too late. When she was a foot from the creature, Aliya leapt, unfurling her wings and beating them hard. The maneuver propelled her over the monster, its jaw snapping behind her like a man-sized mousetrap. Once over top of its head, Aliya swung her wings in a downstroke, slamming her feet into the monster's snout and plunging her glowing sword through its eye. The eye instantly boiled, hissing and burping, scrambling like a large bloody egg. The creature shook and roared, snapping upwards, but Aliya was already gliding back to Hector, shaking bits of sizzling eye off of her blade. I'd say it's just decorative. Hector shook his head and his eyes smiled. All right, smartass, let's put this thing down. Aliya grinned back. Stumbling and side-eyeing the duo, the creature lunged forward, its teeth chattering in anticipation. Go on my mark, Hector said, lifting a river boulder with his magic and holding it steady. The monster charged, and Aliya stood her ground. Every instinct in her body was screaming at her to fly, but she waited as the beast bore down upon her, until she could feel its hot breath steam her skin. Hector did not forsake her. He crashed his boulder into the monster and knocked it onto its side. Now! Aliya sprang forward, jetting herself past the creature's midriff, stabbing her superheated blade into its belly and ripping down its length. The flesh squealed in response, and the surrounding hair burst into flames. Its hind leg kicked out reflexively, catching Aliya and knocking her to the ground. Before she could react, the beast rolled onto her, smothering her with its bloody stomach. She gasped at the sudden pressure, choking on blood. The muffled voice of Hector bellowed from outside. Get off her, you bloated bastard! With a firm grip on her sword, Aliya forced her arm into the creature's guts, stabbing the blade through its intestines. Liquids of various viscosity and foul odors cascaded onto her, but still she stabbed and stabbed. Finally, the pressure was released, and Aliya rolled to her feet, choking and wiping as much goop from her face as she could. I can't see. Rubbing her eyes frantically, she peered out from underneath her hands. The creature had been knocked aside again. Its skull was cracked. Its eye was closed. Hector's boulder rested a few meters away, dripping with gore. A smile grew on Aliya's face, her body reverberating with adrenaline. We did it! We sure did, girl. We sure did. But the voice did not belong to Hector. He was crumpled on the ground, his eyes dull and lightless. Aliya squinted. She hadn't realized she was smiling at a corpse, not until crimson fingernails sliced into her shoulder. We couldn't let that pestering barbarian get away. It was a woman's voice, dull and rustling. Her chalky, ashen dress brushed Aliya's spine, crackling and crunching like dead leaves. Her nails danced on Aliya's shoulder before slithering to caress her neck. Above the stench of intestinal fluid, Aliya distinctly smelled black molasses. Spirits below, I have to. Aliya wanted to run, but her muscles and mind ached, fear scorching her nerves. She was planted and hunched like the willow brush. The woman tilted her head, her cavernous eyes reflecting nothing. The skin on her face was unflawed and expressionless, as if she was wearing a porcelain mask. Swans have such long, graceful necks, wouldn't you say? A pity they're always sticking them out. The woman's raspy hand clenched around Aliya's throat, and the Celestial thrashed her arms and kicked her legs, swinging her sword wildly behind her. Let me go! Despite struggling, she could not break free and could not find purchase on her attacker. With a click of her tongue, the witch bent Aliya's fingers back and stole the sword. Such a light blade. This must be Empyrean steel. You don't mind if I test the edge? A weight pressed across Aliya's left wing. Her vision blackened and her entire body spasmed. Despite the chokehold, her scream rang out. No, spirits! Stop! Please! Oh dear, shush, child. Feathers grow back. Another slice, another scream. Satisfied, the witch released her grip and tossed the weapon aside. Marvelous. Just as sharp as the legends say. Aliya fell to a knee, frantically pulling her wings forward. A single cut across each wing had decapitated her primary feathers. What was once a beautiful white plumage was now a bloody, sooty mess. Oh! Aliya's chest heaved and her shoulders shook. Hector was framed between her severed feathers, blood pooling around his head. His eyes were still open, staring endlessly at the sky. With every heartbeat she watched him, raking sorrow pulsed through her veins. Hector, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." A black wrath bit into her heart, and she fixated on the witch, her eyes watering. "I'll kill you." The witch's cherry-red lips curled, and she snaked a lock of raven hair around her finger while stepping over the dead mercenary. "Better warriors than you have tried. You may call me Senka. Here, you dropped this." Senka gestured with her porcelain hand, and a leather journal flew into Aliya's face, hard enough to be more painful than insulting. It fell splayed on the ground, opening at a self-portrait of Aliya, but something was wrong with the picture. "I found this in the ruins of Venezuela and thought its safe return would be prudent. You're welcome." Aliya glanced down at the journal, trembling. It looked as though someone had taken a knife and had cut out pieces of the wings in the picture. But not just the wings. The portrait of Aliya had a gaping hole chewed through the heart. "You've ruined it!" "Do my ears deceive me? I ruined it." Senka strode forward, reached out, and then pressed her clawed fingernails into Aliya's throbbing cheek until she bled. The witch lingered and then pierced deeper, a ghost of a smile hidden on her lips. "My dear, I haven't so much as touched your precious little journal. You did all that yourself." The world suddenly snapped into focus. Aliya remained frozen, blinking away tears at the sudden light, her forehead pounding with a colossal headache. The air was sweet, a stream gurgled, birds chirped. As her vision adjusted, she found herself not skewered by a witch, but by a gray willow brush, its gangly gnarled branches stabbing into her cheek. "What?" Aliya swiped the branches away, surprised to find her sword in her hand, still bloody. Her eyes darted around the embankment for the witch, but she and the corpse of the monstrous canine had vanished. Aliya felt a sliver of relief amidst the confusion, but her spirit sank when she saw Hector's body, her journal, and her severed feathers still lay in the dirt by the riverbed. Chapter 2: A Heavy Heart. "What's wrong, sweetie?" There was a pause, followed by curt, shallow breaths. "Papa, why can't I fly?" Gideon turned, set his pencil in the crook of his drafting table, and adjusted his spectacles. Aliya trembled before him, her attire blotted with grass stains and blood. Her father's eyes widened, and he rushed to her. "By Anzu, Aliya!" Gideon tucked his sleeve and pressed it firmly over the gash at her elbow. "Don't tell me you jumped off the plateau." Her father's firm expression was softened by the worry in his eyes, though a hint of anger peppered his voice. "I tried the roof. I'm sorry. I tried so hard. Everyone else can fly. Why can't I do it, Papa?" Her father shook his head and set her on a stool. "Don't move." Gideon paced out of the room and returned with a damp washcloth, rubbing the grime off the young Celestial's face. The summer air was stuffy and hard to breathe, and Aliya sat silently brooding, waiting for her father's response. "You're reckless, girl, you know that?" Ah! Aliya winced as Gideon washed the cheek she had grazed in the fall. He paused and continued more gently. "You have a strong heart, Aliya. You share that with your mother. But strong hearts are heavy ones, too, and sometimes it's going to weigh you down." Aliya's eyes swam with disappointment, and she dropped her father's gaze. "I'm not sure if I want a heart then. Not if I can't fly." "Nonsense!" Gideon crouched down, wiping more blood from Aliya's elbow. "If you want to fly, you're going to have to push yourself harder. Harder than any other Celestial your age. You'll have to train every single day, strengthen your muscles, your mind, and your heart." "But why me? Why am I different? Why is my heart so heavy?" Gideon exhaled and eased himself to the floor, his wings ruffling slightly. He adjusted his spectacles once again. "You're not so different. Everybody struggles with something, my dear. Some of us struggle with walking, some with reading, and others with making friends. Everyone has a weakness, and it so happens yours is flight. You are also far from the first to have trouble flying." Her father gave her a knowing smile. "Thankfully, we can remedy this. Aliya pointed vaguely in the direction of the plateau, but Gideon patted her arm down. In due time, my dear. I appreciate your courage, but you will have to channel it properly. Let me finish my drawing, and then we will practice flying together, all right? Aliya's eyes lit up, and she nodded her head vigorously. Yes, yes! Gideon hugged her tight before returning to his drafting table. Promise me you won't do anything reckless while you wait. You understand? Aliya nodded in hearty agreement. Chapter 3. Search for a Savior. Pain refused Aliya sleep, so she marched alongside it, her legs trembling and complaining with each progressive step. Her toes curled in her shoes and her eyelids were heavy, constantly fighting against gravity. Just one more step. There. Now another. Her wings were in miserable condition, numb, heavy, and burning. The exposed skin along the cuts from Senka's attack were swollen, angry red, and a frothy liquid bubbled around the wingtips. Coin-sized blue-headed flies swarmed and skittered across her wounds, causing her to expend energy every few minutes to scrape them away. Eventually, she decided it wasn't worth the effort and gave in to the crawling. Aliya didn't know why, but her hands felt tight and hard, like rocks, even though they hung loosely at her side. Hector's haunting voice drilled into her mind. My blood is poisoned, my blood is poisoned, my blood is poisoned. Spirits, Hector, I'm so sorry. I'll keep my promise. I'll deliver your medallion. I just need to stay alive first. The Celestial swallowed past the lump in her throat. Hector was not the only ghost she was contending with. Despite actively pushing her thoughts and grief about the battle with the Riven aside, her brain continued to nag her about it. Surely I didn't hallucinate that battle. Surely I didn't maim myself and kill Hector in a delusion. In fact, that's exactly what a witch would want me to think. A witch would want me to think I'm going mad. I'm not. Crazy people talk to themselves out loud. Besides, Aliya patted her satchel. The familiar weight of the journal was both reassuring and unnerving. I lost this during the collapse. I don't know how Senka found it and then found me, but it's proof that I met her. The battle was real. It had to be. Every time the Celestial raised her head, she saw 3 cold azure peaks, the Agari Mountains. They were etched so firmly in her vision that she saw them even when she closed her eyes. They had been growing with every step she suffered, and that progress was a cooling mental relief. It was a good thing. It had been 5 days since she'd last had a meal, and the pangs of hunger consumed her thoughts. More than once, she had contemplated eating tree bark and grass. And insects. It would be an hour to fly there now. Just gotta keep pushing. Aliya made her way into a small gully, sliding down a mixture of dead grass and crunchy snow. At the bottom, she was rewarded with a rutted, winding dirt road, the color of fresh leather. It would have been a muddy, sticky trap, but the chilly temperature had frozen the dirt into a walkable path. Aliya's thighs and knees sang praises for the flat terrain, and she just about sang out loud herself. Thank the spirits, civilization, I'm so close now. Soon the sun reached its apex, its comforting rays relaxing and warming her. Aliya closed her eyes and lifted her head, allowing the warmth to wash over her face. It was a small solace. Whoa! 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 A thunderous voice caused Aliya to jump, and she tripped over her feet, falling onto her hands and knees. Sharp stones stuck into her skin and pierced her flesh. Blood welled to the surface. Horses screamed, snorted, and stamped in protest, and their reins jangled. Boxes thudded, and the sound of glass breaking inspired a round of curses from a colorfully dressed merchant driver. Peeling the shrapnel from herself, Aliya wiped her eyes and brought a knee forward, her body complaining all the while. As a sharp dread filled her, she willed her legs to move, but the muscles didn't so much as twitch. I can't stand up. Spirits below, you broke half the teacup inventory, Irma. What in the blazes are we stopping for? There's a bloody person on the road. I couldn't see him till I got over the hill. A person? A bloody one. What was I supposed to do, run them over? There was a brief pause in the conversation. Ready your magic, Could be swordtails. This smells like an ambush. 2 pairs of spurred boots studded into the dirt and crunched over to Aliya, who still had her face down to the frozen gravel, her knee pressing into her chest. The Celestial rolled over onto her elbow, then onto her wing, pushing charcoal-colored blood and white ooze out of her severed wingtips. She bit her cheek to stop herself from screaming and swallowed to clear her throat. It's not a trap. I'm a wounded traveler. I need aid. I sound so pathetic. Get it together, Aliya. Squinting, she watched the gaudy merchants wobble from around their caravan, thick oak staffs in their hands. Each was well-fed and well-dressed in bright purple tunics. The man donned a sharp feathered hat, a size too small, and the woman had massive golden-hooped earrings that stretched her earlobes like hot taffy. A Celestial, the small hat man gruffly announced, stroking a thin, patchy beard. Her wings, they've been cut, the female responded, bemused, hands on her hips. The couple shared a sinister look. Shall we? The man adjusted his hat, stepped forward, and with a flourish, jabbed the point of his staff at Aliya's throat. Aliya squawked in surprise, but the man's attack was slow and clumsy. She could easily knock the staff aside. I'm no threat to you, she squeaked. You shitbirds dropped a bridge on our heads. Business for the Ivor teacup has never been the same. You should suffer worse. Consider this a mercy. The man pulled back to swing again. Aliya had seen many Abellan humans who harbored the same eyes. They were furious and stormy. They were filled with killing intent. I'm not going to die to tea merchants. A foggy yet powerful current of desperation arced through Aliya's mind. She kicked the incoming staff aside, drawing her sword from across her waist. I said I'm no threat to you, but I can be. The merchant roared, ignoring the threat, and swung his staff around again. Adrenaline and instinct spiked in Aliya. Despite her sword being nearly weightless, she was so weak that her muscles shivered to lift the blade and block the attack. Asshat! Wrenching her hands down, she shaved her sword across the length of the staff, severing the merchant's thumb. The weapon fell from his grasp, and he jumped back, cursing and covering his gushing wound. The shitbird got me! I'll take care of this wench. The female merchant raised her hands, the air shimmering and sparkling around them. Aliya flinched. Invocation. In the split second, Aliya found a rock and threw it as hard as she could. The projectile sunk into the merchant's stomach. She wheezed as fire shot from her hands, missing Aliya and dousing her caravan with furious tangerine flames. The canvas ignited and the horses screamed in fright, bolting off at full speed. Whoa! Whoa! The small-hatted merchant let out a shriek as he was bowled over and trampled. The hooves of the fleeing horses pounded into his back and head, and then, to add insult to injury, they abruptly shifted direction so both caravan wheels ran him over. Aliya cranked her body and rolled to the side of the road, the frenzied horses and wagon crashing past her and off into the forest. Heavy copper kettles, broken porcelain cups, and bags of tea scattered around her. An entire black cauldron thudded into the dirt beside Aliya's head, nearly crushing her. Damn beasts! Look what you've done, shitbird! Why couldn't you just die? The woman stalked towards Aliya, her hands raised again, glowing embers bouncing around her fingers. Aliya glanced up to see her oncoming attacker and launched a heavy kettle. She misjudged the weight, but the metal cookware skipped across the ground, smacking into the shins of her merchant assailant. Taffy ears crumpled to her knees in agony. Gah! Now! Aliya burst upwards, her muscles fueled with the will to survive. Bringing another shiny kettle with her, she leapt forward and ripped the handle down, crashing her improvised weapon into the head of the merchant. The copper rang like a bell, and the woman's head jerked, blood and teeth raining from her mouth. The woman fell limply to the ground, and Aliya smashed her once more for good measure. Bitch, Aliya muttered, as she crouched over her defeated opponent, saliva dripping down her chin. She drew in a few haggard breaths before an incredible pain burst across her back, and she stumbled forward, taking another blow to the head. I'm going to pluck ya and then skin ya alive, shitbird. Small Hat had returned to his feet with a freshly broken nose and unbridled rage. He was now wielding his trusty staff in his other hand. Aliya's vision was so blurry that 3 of him wavered before her. I'm gonna break you like your cheap teacups, she huffed, a hollow anger churning in her chest. Her body rippled. She dived forward with supernatural speed, ducked under his swing, and thrust her knee upwards straight into his chest. The sound of dead branches snapping met Aliya's ears, but it wasn't branches. It was ribs, as her knee pulverized the merchant. He fell back, shaking but unconscious. Aliya raised the kettle, her fury and pain driving her arm down. Her thoughts burst with a righteous pleasure of smashing the face of this would-be murderer, but just before she could deliver the blow, she stopped. The aroma of blood and smoke filled her nostrils. Sunbeams scattering from the pile of shattered porcelain jabbed at her eyes. The pitiful moans of her opponents tugged at her heart. What am I doing? I'm not a killer. Stop. Aliya let the kettle fall to the ground, giving her opponent a mercy she was sure he would not have reserved for her. Night had fallen as Aliya stumbled past the portcullis of Agari town, copper light flickering from the braziers illuminating her path. Voices chanting, pounding drums, and a cacophony of instruments echoed from further into town. Promise of festivities would normally lighten Aliya's spirits, but the prospect of celebration while being sick and injured was impossible. Guards were stationed on both sides of the entrance, decorated in chainmail and leaning on heavy spears. They did not obstruct her or offer to help. They just watched her wordlessly. Aliya was wise enough not to speak to them either, and chose to hobble quickly past. A Bellan hospitality was not typically reserved for Celestials. The streets were glowing with fiery paper lanterns and long dancing shadows. The light was gentle, but was enough to make Aliya's head throb and her eyes water. Fir and pine trees lined the streets, their branches arching far overhead, giving the air a slightly spicy fragrance. Log buildings towered around her, and she shuffled through a small crowd of people swarming around a merchant's stall. Further ahead, men and women carrying a magnificent wooden shrine swayed through the street, their voices ethereal as if they were inhabited by a god. The shrine was decorated almost entirely in blinking red lanterns, and the density of the magic around it caused it to shimmer and smell of fresh rain. Peering past the lanterns into the window of the shrine, Aliya glimpsed the form of a majestic deer-like creature with stunning golden antlers. The animal noticed Aliya and turned to peer at her, but as the shrine swayed and dipped down, something obscured the window. When the shrine swayed back, the window was dark. Aliya pinched her arm. Great. Now I really am seeing things. Snow had been shoveled out of cobblestone walkways into fortifications, and a small army of snowmen had been constructed, which children were battling to destroy. The children laughed and shot bursts of magical fire and dirt at the snowmen from their hands, melting and mashing them to pieces. But the battle for the snowmen wasn't so one-sided. As one snowman had his head pulverized, it instantly reformed. The snow, rocks, even the carrot flying back into place. Some sort of magic is repairing them. Amazing. On the other side of the battleground was a shopping district. Dozens of small vendors lined the pavements. Magic baubles hung from fishing nets above the shops, glowing with dull green-blue light. She waited her turn, getting closer and closer to the cheery, hopeful light of a merchant's stand. It was a display selling seasonal winter fruit. Before she could utter a word, the merchant caught sight of her, pulled on his goatee in panic, and jabbed his finger at her. You! Celestial! Stay away! I can smell you from over here! He glanced hurriedly at all his potential patrons, as if in the next moment, because of Aliya, they would all evaporate. Guards! Guards! There's a sky rat stinking up my stall! Merchants, customers, and guards alike took notice of Aliya. Her skin crawled, and she saw herself reflected in their bitter faces, repugnant, as if she really was a rat. Fine, I'm leaving. Aliya limped back into the pine trees in darkness, shivering. Bastard, what an ass. I'm freezing. All I wanted was directions and food. Just then she spied a family walking away from the light, presumably back to their home. A strong father with his son sitting on his shoulders, and a mother and daughter carrying textiles. They noticed Aliya staring at them and quickened their pace. Some deep-buried longing emboldened her. Please, Aliya croaked, stumbling after them, almost chasing them. Spirits, I'm so cold. Would you invite me into your home? Begone with you, wing rat, the man bellowed, leading his family away. The daughter locked eyes with Aliya, a mixture of fear, fascination, and pity on her face. Then the family disappeared down an alleyway, leaving her alone in the maze of buildings, trees, and darkness. Why would I ask that? What did I think was going to happen? Aliya fell onto the snowy curb and cried into her hands. In the few minutes she allowed herself to cry, her hair and ratty clothes froze stiff to her body. Lying down was a critical mistake. Delirious, ashamed, and far past the point of exhaustion, Aliya fell into a fever dream. She woke up in the street gutter, unable to remember when she had fallen asleep. Better yet, why had she awoken? Warmth flooded her body, as a fur coat was wrapped around her, and muscular arms cradled her head and legs, lifting her like she was a cloud. She caught a hint of tobacco smoke. "Papa?" she asked tentatively. Who else could it possibly be? Her savior paused, and his grip on Aliya tightened. The man's face was shadowed. Aliya could only see the orange glow of the cigar he smoked. His irises were an unnatural burning orange. They seemed to reflect the light from the cigar. Or did they? Since when did Papa smoke? "It's me," the man replied, taking a long drag. "Welcome home. You're safe now." Chapter 4. A Medallion and a Promise. Aliya blasted upright and yelled in oblivious fury. The poor nurse sitting at the table flinched and yelped in shock, knocking her cup over as she sprang to her feet. Glass shattered across the floor as the two stared at each other. The nurse's eyes widened, and then she flew excitedly out of the door. "Ashlyn! Ashlyn! She's awake!" Aliya threw off her heavy bed covers and sat up, almost falling right over with a rush of vertigo. She was wrapped in a silky smooth white nightgown, with thoughtful slits in the back to allow her wings to unfurl. Of course, Aliya did this immediately, or at least she tried to. To her dismay, her entire wingspan had been meticulously wrapped in bandages, restricting her wings, allowing them to only open partially. A million questions shouted in her head, but one screamed louder than the rest. How am I still alive? Footsteps pounded down the hallway, growing louder and louder, until a middle-aged woman burst into the room, her brown eyes wide and beady. "Yes, you're awake." "Who are you? How did I get here?" Aliya realized her wings were still half unfurled. She pulled them tight against her back. Panting, the woman shook the brown curls of hair out of her face and gave a bow. "Oh, you understand Abellan. Perfect. My name's Ashlyn. I'm the physician who has been looking after you the last week. Please, relax. It's all right. You're safe here." Aliya stayed upright, but the room was spinning. "A week? How did I get here?" "You don't remember? Ashlyn rummaged through the various pockets in her apron, retrieving a pencil and a notebook, chewing on an eraser before jotting something down. "Folks say you stumbled into town, tripped over your feet, and collapsed right in the middle of the road. You were calling weekly for help. I am ashamed to say, nobody bothered to stop for you. Some merchants apparently even dragged you off to the side so you wouldn't block their wagons." The physician dropped her gaze to the floor. "Apparently, you fell silent after about an hour and smelled so bad, most folks walking past assumed you were a corpse. The town guards went to look for you, but you were gone. One of those mercenaries carried you in here, a real serious-looking fella." Aliya's breath escaped her, small sparks dancing in front of her eyes as the memories flooded back. She lay back in the bed, taking a long gulp of air. "I saw my father. Or did I?" After her head cleared, she spoke. "Does this mercenary have a name?" Ashlyn gnawed on the eraser again. "Started with an H. Hector?" The name slid out before Aliya could stop it. "No, idiot, it couldn't be." Aliya remembered the coarse, dry river rocks scratching her hands as she piled them over Hector's body. She recalled the splinters in her fingers as she marked his grave with driftwood, and she held a memory of the slight warmth of his face as she closed his eyes. He was dead. Not that one. Charming guy, Hector. Fancied him myself, but he prefers women with swords, not scalpels. For the first time, Aliya noticed her left hand was cramped and clenched shut. She willed her fingers to open. Slowly they unfurled, like a flower going to bloom, and in her hand rested Hector's golden medallion. A pain pierced her chest, like an arrow had skewered her lungs. Ashlyn's brown eyes squinted. Well, I'll be. You know, your hand has been clenched since last week. Even asleep, even with sedatives, we couldn't get you to let go, short of breaking your fingers. I've never seen anything like it. What you got there? Swiftly, Aliya lifted the medallion, unwrapped the chain, slid it over her neck and down her shirt. The cool metal and weight reminded her of Hector's last request. Now he was dead, perhaps she should oblige him. But at the moment, there was another matter at hand. It's just a memento from my father. Anyway, will I be able to fly again? Ashlyn stiffened, her lips forming a line. If she sensed Aliya was lying, it seemed she didn't care. She flipped a few pages back in her notebook, took a short breath, and looked Aliya straight in the eye. Well, here's what I can tell you. The sun was balancing on the Agari Mountains, minutes from setting, when a young man dressed in leather armor, a short sword on his left hip, entered Aliya's room unannounced. She jumped and turned abruptly away from the window as he marched straight up to her. A symbol of the three mountains was emblazoned over his heart. His brown hair was combed back, and he wore a stubble beard. Aliya's heart stopped for a second, followed by a simmering annoyance. She straightened her stance to feign confidence. Hello? Sorry, do I know you? The young man rolled his eyes and settled on a glare. No, you don't. Riker, sergeant of the Agari Watchmen. I'm supposed to get the details regarding some sort of attack. Name? Oh, I'm Aliya. For the next few minutes, Aliya informed the man of her encounter with the Gale mercenaries. I was on my way to Venezuela, and I had just spent the night in an abandoned farmhouse. I was flying over the eastern foothills when I spotted a group of mercenaries from the air. I wouldn't have noticed them, but they were firing off powerful invocation spells, massive fireballs. As I flew closer, I saw they were fighting a pack of goblins, and that's when the monster struck. I could see the ambush from the air. This leaf-green, riven dog monster charged from the willow brush and trampled a couple mercenaries. I was too late to warn them. I flew down and tried to help, but I only managed to carry one man to safety. The rest were shredded or devoured. The goblins didn't survive either. Riker snorted and shook his head. Aliya was taken aback. Is there a problem? Nah, please continue. Tell me all about how expert monster hunters were devoured, and you somehow survived. The Celestial crossed her arms, biting her cheek. She fumbled, searching for the right words, so the sergeant cut her off. Well, spit it out. I haven't got all day. She raised her hands, exasperated. If your job is to take my statement, then shut your mouth. Riker took a few threatening steps forward, his boots grinding across the stone floor. Who do you think you're talking to? Listen here, Skyrat. I got a job to do, and it isn't listening to fairy tales. I'm telling the truth. Aliya thrust the medallion forward. A Gale mercenary named Hector gave me this. It's as real as he was. Oh, let me see. Riker approached, his expression softening. With a gloved hand, he inspected the medallion, turning it over and reading the inscription on the back. Aliya's eyes burned into his forehead. Eventually, Riker leaned back. This belongs to a Gale mercenary, all right, and you're wearing it. Do you know what stolen valor is, Skyrat? Huh? Riker ripped the metal from Aliya's neck, pieces of the broken chain scattering to the floor. Aliya wanted to punch him right in his smarmy mouth, split his lip, bust his nose. The anger fueled her muscles, but, as always, she was petrified. Wearing a medal you didn't earn is a serious crime. It comes with a serious punishment. Is something the matter here? Ashlyn had peeked into the room, her curls bobbing around her face. Her eyes jumped from the links of broken gold chain on the floor, to Aliya, and then to the murderous watchman. Riker shoved the medal into his pocket, giving Aliya one last sneer before turning around. No, there's no problem here. I was double-checking a few details. Ashlyn feigned surprise. Oh, and what might those be? Perhaps I could help. Well, you see, official business. Of course. My bad. I must keep my patient's personal matters private as well. Speaking of which, it's time for her checkup. If you require my patient further, please return tomorrow. Riker took his leave, but as he strode past Ashlyn, she held out a hand. Hold a second, hun. You forgot a buckle. Riker waved his hands in protest, but the physician reached over his shoulder and reefed on a strap. There, nice and tight. Thank you, he said through gritted teeth, shoving past her and clomping down the hallway. Ashlyn watched him leave before sighing. Don't know what's the matter with him. He's got such a mean streak to him. Why can't he be more like his brother? That one's such a sweetheart. He took something important from me. Aliya knelt and ran the broken chain over her fingers, her cheeks wet. Ashlyn produced the golden medallion, setting it in Aliya's palm. The Celestial started. Huh? The physician set a scalpel on the tray across from the bed. The woman you're looking for is Sarah. She works sentry duty on the Agari Bridge leading into the garrison. Blonde hair, like yours. She's pretty, bit of a ditz. Doesn't have much charm either. The two of you would probably get along. Aliya took a moment, unsure if Ashlyn's words were helpful, insulting, or flattering. She closed her hand tightly around the medallion. Chapter 5, Kamiko. A couple days later, Aliya found herself sitting on the edge of her bed, reading the same line in her book for the 10th time, as she tried to ignore a bead of sweat rolling down her wing. It was a bestiary packed to the brim with dragons, trolls, and even carnivorous tree spirits. The information was interesting, but the tome had limited details on massive canine monstrosities. The term Hector had used for the beast was Riven, but no such creature was recorded. The name stuck out in Aliya's memory. Celestials practiced incantations to calm and control spirits. In fact, Celestials were renowned for the fearsome power of their magical songs and chants. During choir lessons, Aliya could recall her instructor singing a lullaby intended for Riven, but the lyrics were on the tip of her tongue. Ugh. She straightened, her eyes focusing on the page again. Werewolves, goblins, shapeshifters, where was I? Despite her best efforts, the Celestial couldn't remember if she had read the page or not, and with a twinge of frustration, she closed the tome, tossing it onto her bed without bothering to look at her page number. Mountains. Aliya stood and walked to her window. Agari was nestled in the crux of 3 massive mountains, whose presence was as comforting as it was humbling. She had always found herself back at her window, staring longingly at the rock structures. Every fiber of her being wanted to be aloft, the wind ripping through her hair, her feathers sliding through the sky, looking upon the mountains in their full grandeur. Now it might never happen. An awful scraping caused Aliya to flinch, and she studied the clay overhang above her window. All this monster business has made me jumpy. Must have been a sparrow. I need to... Aliya looked down and reached to slide the window closed. When she glanced up, a face flipped in front of her. Gah! A shock ripped through the Celestial and she punched out in defense. Bwah! The face yelled, nose and cheek smushed in. Suddenly, strong hands grappled with Aliya, pulling her through the window. A small line of shrubbery broke their fall. Aliya landed stomach first on a bony knee, but managed to roll off of the shrub. Her assailant, a human girl, also slid off the shrub, blood streaming down her chin. She was spewing obscenities. Aliya's guts exploded with pain. It was all she could do to crawl away a few paces and groan desperately for air. The human was also knelt over, wiping her head across the grass. The few pedestrians walking by quickened their pace. Are you okay? Aliya managed to raise a thumbs up, signifying she was not dead. Her attacker couldn't have been older than 12. Her hair was bobbed and oak brown, and she had a wooden guitar strapped to her back. Amazingly, the instrument seemed unharmed by the fall. What the hell? What were you doing? The human was pinching her nose, and her voice was thick and croaky. I wanted to see you. This is a hospital. Surely you know how to use a bloody door. Aliya stood, her torso biting in protest. They won't let me in for visitation anymore. And why not? Well, the girl's eyes had a sly glint to them. I may or may not have set something on fire here once. Accidentally. Aliya's mouth opened and snapped shut several times as she tried to come up with some sort of response. Maybe I should run. Who are you? The human smiled as if that would mend all transgressions, but blood had smeared around her mouth and it made the gesture far from effective. I'm Kamiko Nakamura, and you are? Aliya. After a few measured seconds, Aliya pointed to her room. I'm gonna go back. Don't climb on the roof anymore, and don't even think about coming in through my window. I'll punch your nose again. The Celestial walked away, but Kamiko called after her. Wait, I need your help. Aliya paused and hated herself for it. What could this deranged child possibly want? She stormed back. This better be good. Kamiko's eyes betrayed her with a sliver of relief. She looked around in panic, parting and prodding at the brush beside her. Oh, 1 second, just to give me 1 sec there. Triumphantly, she pulled a black leather bag out of the brambles and dusted various leaf and stick bits off before gesturing to Aliya. Check it out. The girl held the bag open and Aliya cautiously peered inside. A sweet, cold, pleasant smell wafted past her, and sure enough, the bag contained numerous little orbs of pink, green, and white. Some of the orbs had been smushed a little and a red paste filling had escaped. Aliya stepped back. What? Kamiko shook the bag, beaming. It's mochi. My mom made them. I thought you might like some. I would have some too, but my hands are all bloody. Aliya pursed her lips, perplexed, but the smell overpowered her self-control. She couldn't help herself. Reaching her hand in, she retrieved one and took a bite. Mochi, huh? The cake was smooth and gentle in both flavor and texture. The best part was that it was cold. Kamiko watched the Celestial intently, her eyes bouncing from Aliya's face to her bandaged wings, then to her face again. I know hospital food is, well, food most days, but nothing beats homemade treats. I wanted to bring some of these as a get-well gift. Kamiko flashed another gruesome smile. I guess it's more of an apology now. Aliya reached in and grabbed a second one, lowering herself to the grass to ease her burning muscles. She had never expected to receive a get-well gift. Then again, she didn't expect to get pulled out a second-story window either. Well, thank you, I suppose. The Celestial ate another before holding a few out to Kamiko. Here, I'll pass you some. The two girls ate in silence. The sun hugged Aliya's bandaged wings and gown, and a gentle breeze stopped her from getting too hot. Across the street in a residential district, neighbors were casually chatting and hanging out their laundry. But Aliya's attention was centered on her human company. She snuck a glance at the girl. Kamiko's nose and cheeks had a sprinkling of freckles. She was dressed in grass-stained slacks and a wrinkled green tunic. A single toe poked through a hole in her shoes. Certainly not the attire of a noble. So, when do you get out of the hospital? Kamiko licked her fingers clean and took her guitar off, lying back on the grass. I just did, Aliya laughed, and her stomach ached as punishment. In a couple days, I think. Why? Kamiko gave Aliya a sinister look. Do you want to be my training partner? No. Oh, come on. You don't even know what for. Shall I convince you with a song? I'd prefer not. Kamiko strummed once and stuck out her bottom lip. You're really a downer. I'm a first-year student, and I'm looking for a partner. I thought you, a strong and capable Celestial, would make a wonderful partner. Guess not. Aliya rolled her eyes. Nice try, kid. I have business of my own to take care of. Business? You don't strike me as a merchant. Aliya reached up to the collar of her hospital gown and squeezed her palm, pressing the medallion. Don't be coy. You know I'm not a merchant. So what are you? Kamiko strummed again, seemingly out of habit, then pressed down on the neck of her guitar, cutting the sound short. Aliya thought for a moment and gestured back, raising one of her bandaged wings. Broken. Kamiko shrugged and rolled onto her feet. If you want, I could help piece you back together. The human slapped a slip of paper into the Celestial's hands and slung her guitar over her shoulder, giving the Celestial a nod. See you tomorrow. She walked away, humming noisily to herself. Aliya unfolded the paper, staring in disbelief. It was an admission form for the Agari garrison to apply for the Gale Vanguard Company, novice tutelage, and it had been already completed in her name. What? You're training to be a mercenary? For the first time, Kamiko had no reply. Hector and his comrades had been Gale mercenaries. The Gale Vanguard was an independent mercenary company so large and prominent that their foremost base of operations constituted a city-state named Venezuela. Gale mercenaries worked to hunt down dangerous mages and monsters, and fought on the frontier to slow the growing witherlands. The Celestial watched Kamiko disappear into town. Her mind was a jumble of feelings and thoughts, but one stood apart from the rest. What the blazes?